Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. I want to comment on the idea of the $1 trillion coin. So right now, one of the so-called solutions to the debt crisis is that Congress could produce a $1 trillion coin. And it comes from a loophole they had when they were introducing the commemorative coin program. There was a limit to the face value you could put on gold and silver coins, but not for any other precious metals. So they're thinking about a $1 trillion coin made of platinum. I don't think there's any limitations if you use other metals as well. I would much prefer to see a $1 trillion lump of bismuth, right? A big crystal that they could display. Especially if they could put it in a museum at the Smithsonian and call that the $1 trillion bismuth crystal, right? I'd love to help them if they're thinking of such an idea. But I want to point out the first time I ever heard about this idea was actually during the Obama years. I was working on my PhD. I was working on a problem called Ramsey theory. And I had written this computer program that could potentially solve it, but it would take a long time to run. And I wanted to estimate how long it would take to run, so I ran what would have been a billionth of that program, and it took about 1,000 seconds, which is about 15 minutes. And I thought to myself, hey, the whole program would take 1 trillion seconds. That's not too long. I got out my calculator, and I figured out it was 32,000 years. I was a little bit surprised by that. We have been hearing about trillions of dollars on the news, and a trillion just sounded like any other number by the time we got to Obama's second term. So I was a little bit surprised by that. I was working on my PhD. They gave me a nice office for me to work on my research, and I just imagined the entire building covered with snow and ice during the next ice age, and the computer's still working away at Ramsey theory. Now, I wonder how you would keep a computer powered for 30-some thousand years, right? Two ideas immediately, or three ideas actually, immediately jump to mind on how one can keep a computer running for 30,000 years. The first one is to launch it into space, where you could have solar panels. There's little oxygen to damage any electronics on board. That might work, right? Voyager is still talking to us to this day. The other idea is to use a RTG, radioisotope thermal generator. The problem is there aren't too many with a decay half-life that's long enough and gives off enough energy to power your equipment, right? You need something with a half-life close to 30-some thousand years. The closest thing I can think of is radium, which has a half-life of 1,600 years, right? So you need a big lump of radium, right? And if it's that big, at the beginning, it might just fry everything in the computer, right? After all, electronics are pretty sensitive to radiation too, right? Or you could be really, 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 really efficient. Then you can use something like thorium, which has a half-life of 11 billion years, and even though you're only going to be using it for 30-some thousand years. But thorium is hardly radioactive, right? You could safely handle it. Actually, the biggest danger of handling thorium is that it does accumulate radon gas as it decays, right? And then the radon gets everywhere, and then it spreads the other daughter products all over the place, right? Anyway, so I thought about a trillion. The other thing we could do, and this one might be even more realistic than either one of these things that I've been talking about, we could make the $1 trillion coin out of either platinum or bismuth or whatever metal they're going to allow. But instead of making just one, we keep making them, spreading them out into circulation until the price of whatever metal we use in the coin is worth $1 trillion. Then we can have sound currency again, right? That's a better idea than all this garbage that they're spewing around, right?